After 20 years' marriage, a wife's choices lead to its downfall. She is now overwhelmed with regret and left in ruins, with nothing remaining. Melissa lingered in the shadowy corner of her living room, enveloped in the soft illumination of a lamp that cast elongated shadows around her. Her gaze was fixed on the window, her mind adrift in contemplation. This night, as with many before, she found herself immersed in memories, pondering the path that had led her here. 2 decades earlier, Melissa and Carlo had vowed to spend a lifetime together. Those times were brimming with joy, aspirations, and a sense of thrill. She fondly recalled how Carlo's eyes shone with hope as they dreamt up their shared future, the comforting sensation of his hand in hers symbolizing a life replete with affection and joy. However, as time elapsed, that luster gradually faded. Conversations that once buzzed with excitement about what lay ahead had now withered into mundane discussions about daily chores and finances. The rich tapestry of their initial years together had lost its vibrancy, replaced by the dullness of routine. Melissa yearned for the fervor they once knew, for the deep connection that time seemed to have eroded. With a sigh, she diverted her attention from the window, surveying the room. It was a beautiful home, a testament to the life they had built, yet it now felt hollow, stripped of the warmth that once filled its space. Lately, Carlo's return from work had become increasingly delayed, and when present, he seemed emotionally distant, as though his thoughts were elsewhere. Melissa struggled to recall the last time they had enjoyed a meal together without the intrusion of digital devices or television. The silences that used to be comfortable and intimate now felt oppressive, charged with unspoken grievances and unresolved tension. She missed the ease of their early relationship, the effortless conversations that spanned from the profound to the trivial. As she was engrossed in her thoughts, the sound of the front door opening and closing snapped her back to reality. Carlo was home. The familiar sound of his footsteps, the rustling of his coat, the gentle clink of his keys, sounds that used to comfort her, now served as stark reminders of the growing gap between them. Entering the living room, Carlo greeted her with a weary smile, a shadow of his usual warmth. "Hey," he said in a soft tone. "Hi," Melissa responded with a forced smile, as they exchanged brief, surface-level details about their day. She longed to reach out, to close the widening gap between them, but the words she needed to express were imprisoned by fear and doubt. That night, as they lay in their shared but lonely bedroom, Melissa remained awake, staring at the ceiling, enveloped by a sense of loss. She was filled with love for Carlo, yet it no longer seemed sufficient. Turning to look at Carlo, peacefully asleep, she gently touched his arm. He stirred slightly but remained asleep. In that moment, a decision took root in Melissa's heart. She desired more than this life of routine and quiet. She craved excitement, passion, a respite from the monotony of their existence. Drifting into sleep, an idea began to form in Melissa's mind, a risky, exhilarating plan. Unbeknownst to her, that night was the onset of a transformative journey, one that would steer her away from the security of her marriage into uncharted territory, a journey fraught with both pain and self-discovery. Melissa entered the lively coffee shop, instantly wrapped in the rich scent of brewing coffee, making her way to the counter. This place was her sanctuary, a spot where she could immerse herself in the buzz of the surrounding life. As she waited for her coffee, her eyes roamed across the patrons, eventually settling on a solitary man at a table in the corner. Engrossed in a book, his dark hair lightly brushed his forehead, exuding a mysterious charm that intrigued Melissa. Holding her coffee, Melissa chose a spot not too distant from this intriguing stranger. She attempted to concentrate on her book, yet her attention repeatedly veered back to him. Eventually, perhaps feeling her stare, he glanced up, their eyes locking in a fleeting, electric connection before Melissa shyly averted her gaze, feeling a flush of warmth in her cheeks. Over time, visits to the coffee shop wove into the fabric of Melissa's daily life. Each trip was tinged with the anticipation of seeing him again, and he was often there. Their interactions, initially just acknowledgments and reserved smiles, slowly blossomed into casual conversation. He introduced himself as Chris, his conversational style making Melissa feel uniquely seen and heard, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long while. Chris stood apart from anyone Melissa had previously encountered. His adventurous spirit shone through as he spoke passionately about his journeys and adventures. He listened to her with an attentiveness that made her feel truly valued, fueling a growing sense of excitement within her. One afternoon, as they sat together, Chris's hand accidentally brushed against hers, sparking an unexpected surge of electricity. He smiled apologetically, but neither withdrew their hands, an undeniable attraction simmering between them. After leaving the coffee shop, Chris suggested a stroll. The rain had ceased, refreshing the air and leaving the streets shimmering. Walking together, they conversed and laughed, the world around them becoming a mere backdrop. Melissa felt a rush of life coursing through her, a blend of trepidation and thrill. Their walk ended in a serene park, where they sat on a bench under the trees. The conversation deepened, and Melissa found herself sharing details about her life, her faltering marriage, and the sense of isolation she endured. Chris listened intently, maintaining eye contact, forging a deeper connection than Melissa had ever felt with Carlo. As the evening concluded, Chris escorted Melissa to her car. A pause filled the air, laden with unspoken questions. Then, impulsively, Chris kissed her. It was a cautious yet stirring kiss, igniting an inner fire within Melissa. Driving home, Melissa's thoughts swirled around Chris. She recognized the peril in her actions, the betrayal it represented to her marriage. Yet, the allure and fervor she felt with Chris were overwhelming. She was irresistibly drawn to him, despite the risks. Lying in bed that night, Melissa acknowledged the pivotal change looming over her life. At a crossroads of risk and uncertainty, she felt a surge of vitality for the first time in years. Though aware of the dangers, she knew there was no turning back, standing on the brink of a transformative chapter in her life. Outside Melissa's window, the early autumn sun cast a golden glow, yet its splendor failed to alleviate the inner chaos she was experiencing. Her secret encounters with Chris had escalated into a tempest of emotion and passion, starkly contrasting her increasingly distant life with Carlo. Melissa was immersed in the thrill of her affair with Chris, finding solace from the tedium of her daily life. Their shared laughs, conversations, and the way he looked at her filled her with a sense of being wanted and revitalized. However, underneath the joy of these meetings, a growing unease took root, a subtle fear that her actions were not just morally questionable but also inherently unstable. Then, things took an unforeseen turn. Chris's text messages dwindled, his replies grew terse, and their once engaging dialogues turned into brief, indifferent exchanges. Melissa felt a sense of foreboding, an undeniable shift in their relationship. On a cool evening at their usual coffee shop meeting spot, an unspoken tension hung in the air between them. Chris's smile lacked its genuine warmth, and his enthusiasm seemed artificial. Concerned, Melissa softly inquired about their situation. Chris paused, then averted his gaze. "I've been thinking," he began slowly, "we've had a good time, Melissa, but it's time for us to go our separate ways." His words struck Melissa with the force of a physical blow, her reality seemingly swaying under her feet. "Go our separate ways," she repeated, her voice filled with disbelief and pain. Chris nodded, still not meeting her eyes. I'm not looking for anything serious. It's better to end this now before things become too complex. Too complex echoed in Melissa's mind, a harsh reminder of the truth she had ignored. She had risked her marriage, her sense of self, for this affair, and now she faced nothing but the sting of rejection. The drive back home was a haze of confusion, regret, and sorrow. Melissa had been so captivated by the allure of her relationship with Chris that she had been blind to its fleeting nature. She had chased an illusion of a new start, only for it to crumble apart. Alone in the darkness, the gravity of her actions dawned on Melissa. She had endangered her marriage with Carlo, chasing a temporary romance that had left her feeling even more isolated. The burden of her decisions weighed heavily on her. That night, lying beside Carlo, the gulf between them felt more profound than ever. She glanced at him, his face relaxed in sleep, and was overwhelmed with remorse. In her quest for something different, she had overlooked the value of what she already possessed. Melissa understood that the forthcoming days would be laden with tough choices and harsh realities. She needed to confront the repercussions of her actions and come to terms with a life irrevocably changed. The fantasy had shattered, and now she faced the daunting task of reconstructing a life she once held dear. Dawn's light seeped through the curtains, spreading a gentle luminescence in the room where Melissa lay, her mind engulfed in a storm of thoughts. The repercussions of her affair with Chris loomed over her, a constant reminder of the deception she had committed. The secret she harbored was like a ghost trailing her every move, impossible to ignore. Once Carlo departed for work, the stillness of their home mirrored the chaos within Melissa's soul. The walls, silent witnesses of their 20-year journey together, now seemed to stand in judgment of her unfaithfulness. With a heavy heart, she acknowledged the inevitable. It was time to confront the aftermath of her actions. Today was the day she would unveil her truth to Carlo. As hours passed and evening neared, Melissa's apprehension intensified. She mentally rehearsed her confession repeatedly, yet the right words seemed elusive. How could she articulate the inexplicable? How could she defend the indefensible? Her heart pounded as she heard the sound of Carlo's car arriving. Carlo entered, wearied from his day, offering a habitual smile, unaware of the impending tempest. Post-dinner, in the living room, Melissa's hands quivered with nervousness. The decisive moment had come. "We need to talk," she whispered, her voice a mere breath. Carlo's expression shifted from relaxed to alarmed. "What's the matter?" he inquired. Inhaling deeply, Melissa spoke, her voice trembled with emotion. "I've done something terrible. I had an affair." Her confession hung heavily in the air, irreversible and profound. Carlo's face turned pale, a mix of astonishment, pain, and disbelief in his eyes. "An affair?" he repeated, his voice laden with agony and anger. "With who? Why?" Melissa unraveled the story, her words cascading in a torrent of remorse and grief. She spoke of Chris, her feelings of loneliness and longing that led her to seek comfort elsewhere. She expressed her guilt and the dawning of her error. Carlo absorbed her words in silent agony, his face stoic yet pained. When Melissa concluded, the room was saturated with the gravity of her words. Carlo rose, his actions measured and slow. "I need time to think about this," he said, his voice empty. He exited the room, leaving Melissa in a pool of her own guilt and dread. That night, their house felt desolate, colder. In bed, the vacant space beside her underscored the growing divide between them. Her confession, far from bringing relief, had ushered in an overwhelming sense of loss. She realized her admission wasn't just about owning up to her guilt, it signified the potential collapse of their marriage. In the ensuing days, Carlo and Melissa coexisted like strangers, their interactions minimal and strained, the emotional distance between them expanding each day. Melissa wrestled with the fallout of her choices, the looming possibility of losing Carlo forever casting a long shadow over her. Facing each day, Melissa understood the formidable path of redemption before her. She had broken the trust that underpinned their marriage, and now she was tasked with the formidable challenge of mending it, bit by arduous bit. The future was uncertain, but Melissa knew she had to approach it with bravery and sincerity. She stood amid the wreckage of her actions, prepared to confront them, no matter how harrowing the journey. The world outside relentlessly advanced, yet within the confines of what was once a home symbolizing love and togetherness, time seemed to halt in agonizing stillness. Melissa drifted through her days, shrouded in a fog of remorse and grief. The home, previously alive with shared laughter and dreams, now resounded with the silence of a lost love. Carlo's physical presence remained, but he had become a shadow of the man he once was. His eyes, once alight at the sight of Melissa, now skimmed over her with a distant, frosty detachment. Their conversations, reduced to mere necessities, lacked the warmth that had once been their hallmark, replaced by an icy atmosphere. Instead of providing solace, Melissa's admission had unleashed waves of agony and guilt, leaving her floundering. She had longed for forgiveness, for an opportunity to mend their fractured marriage, but as the days stretched into weeks, it became apparent that some rifts were irreparable. The affair with Chris, once an exhilarating diversion, now tormented her as her gravest mistake. Memories that were once sources of happiness now served as harsh reminders of her loss. Chris had moved on, leaving Melissa to confront the repercussions of their fleeting encounter alone. Wandering through the now desolate spaces of her home, Melissa was engulfed by a profound sense of loss. Photos adorning the walls, relics of happier times, seemed to taunt her with their static grins. The future she had once imagined with Carlo, rich in love and partnership, had evaporated into a distant, unattainable dream. Efforts to reconnect with Carlo, to bridge the gap that had formed, were met with detached civility. The man she had loved and shared 2 decades with, the father of her children, had become a stranger, impervious to her apologies and efforts at reconciliation. The acknowledgement that she had permanently damaged the most crucial relationship in her life weighed heavily upon her. Nights were restless, her mind caught in a tumult of regrets and hypotheticals. She replayed their final joyful moments, yearning to reverse time, to choose a different path. Support and advice from friends and family were abundant, yet they provided little solace to Melissa. The pain she had caused Carlo and her family was a burden uniquely hers to bear. In the depths of her sorrow, Melissa confronted the true price of her choices. In seeking excitement, an escape from the monotony of her married life, she had sacrificed everything of real value. Her liaison had not been the start of a new chapter but the end of one she now desperately wished to rewrite. Confronted with the reality of a life devoid of Carlo, Melissa was overwhelmed by intense regret. Her quest for happiness had ironically dismantled the very essence of her contentment. The repercussions of her decisions echoed throughout her empty house, a constant reminder of the love she had abandoned. Melissa's narrative wasn't one of recovery or reconstruction, but rather a somber account of loss and the lasting impact of a fleeting error in judgment. It served as a testament to the delicacy of trust and the finality of certain choices. As she looked out her window at a world moving on without her, Melissa was left with nothing but the reverberations of her remorse, a poignant echo of what might have been.